All right, I'm going to talk about this Chinese-made hurdy-gurdy. Uh, it is available on eBay for $800 or $900. I don't know. I haven't. This isn't mine, so I didn't purchase it. But there are changes to it, and I'm going to point those out because the instrument is pretty much unplayable unless you do a lot of changes to it. So first off, let's talk about the good things. The good thing is this handle and crank. The handle and the crank, the handle spins freely. The crank is the right shape. It's the right thickness. The threads are good. You know, as far as the handle and crank go, that's the good thing. Everything else, well, there's a problem. So I kept the original axle because it was fair. It was good enough. But the original wheel was made out of this crappy plastic stuff. So it is phenolic, which is basically linen. I don't know if you can see the linen pattern in there. Basically, it's a linen or a fiber that is embedded in a plastic or in a resin and then pressed to make these wafer pieces. You can make them in a bunch of different sizes. This is what they use for the wheel. It is junk. So I replaced the wheel with a wooden wheel and made a little, you can kind of see the little center portion of it there to support against this axle. The axle was fairly reasonable, although I think it is not actually square at the front to the instrument. It's hard to tell with everything in place. And when I was doing the measurements, it looked okay, but it plays incorrectly. It seems like it plays slightly off. Anyway, so that could be an issue, but so far it's reasonable. I fixed it. So bridges. I replaced all the bridges. Why did I replace the bridges? Because they were junk. So this one was a huge, the drone bridge on this side was a huge chunk of wood glued down in the wrong position. And you can kind of see the ghost of it over here. And it was really fat. And all these bridges, but this one as well, this trumpet bridge. The trumpet bridge was the same kind of design, big, fat, and ugly, and oversized, and in the wrong position. And the main bridge was this thing right here. And this thing right here you can see the remnants of glue on the bottom there. That's what glued it onto the top. Now, the problem is that this bridge is not flat to the actual body of the instrument. So it's hard to see here, but if you put it down on the instrument, or even put it down where it was on the instrument, you can see that it doesn't actually sit flush, and that it doesn't actually hold in any way. So what happened is, as soon as you made the adjustment on the first adjustment on the string to tune it, it just popped loose, and now you've got a free-floating bridge with no anchor points that also did not have a good bridge tie. Like, God, it is really difficult to do this behind the camera. Anyway, didn't have a good bridge tie to hold it in place, so it just floated all over the place. Anyhow, so more junk. So next, this part of the trumpet is in the wrong position. So this hole is in the wrong position, so it wants to pull everything out of line, and so that the tirant doesn't actually make any adjustment. The dog buzzes all the time. You've got to notch it way over here just to keep it in line with the wheel so that it will buzz. The drone bridge, like I said, is in the wrong position. It's forward by about 1/4 of an inch, which, plus or minus, you can get away with that. But since I was fixing things, might as well fix the whole thing. These are French-style bridges. I just use the French-style bridge. There's nothing to say you couldn't use a modern interpretation thereof. I did not replace the tangents. They are original, but I did replace, and I should replace them, but I just haven't gotten to it. But I did replace the the nuts up here because the ones that were here were just like ground down pieces of plastic, like thin little pieces of plastic, and every time you adjusted the string, they just fell over. So they were no good. They didn't do a thing. They weren't wide enough to support the movement of the string, and they also finished the inside of this key box here on the inside where the nuts sit. So if you adjusted the nut, even these, because this is all slick, it just slides back and forth. So the nut, every time you adjust the string, the nut just slides forward, would just slide forward. I put a bunch of sandpaper underneath these to hold them in place and tried to scrape the finish off the bottom down there. So they're using some very thin little foam here as the key backers. I mean, it's functional. You can see that there's a piece there, but it's already peeled off. You can see that kind of the quality of the finish too, where the spray overlaps on all of the decorative pieces. So not good. So let's see. Ears. Had to replace those two. Had to knock those things off with a chisel just to get them free. But this one I didn't go terribly crazy with the ears because they stick way out. They are not, I don't know. They're oddly aligned. So this one I just stuck out farther. This one I just notched in and put a notch there. I need to do the same over here. I just haven't notched this side in yet, but I'll notch it in and then put the upper string in. Same with this peg here. The other thing is that these holes on this side are in the wrong position. So you notice if you put the string here, you put it through that hole, it goes right into the center of that peg. So it comes across here and then goes down under the peg and then over the top, unless you're going over the top, and then it goes up and over the top. So all of the geometry for the way that that's set up is wrong, including the way that the strings initially sit. So they did a reasonable job at creating enough of a slope on the key box to allow for the angle that they need in order to make it a conical shaped instrument, or conical based instrument like this is. But then they took the ears and they made the ears directly straight out. So the wheel was dead flat. This was sloped, and this ear stuck out far enough that it matched the flatness of the original wheel, but now doesn't match the angle of the new wheel that the melody strings match. So there's a lot going on here that geometry-wise is just no good. So there's that. These pegs, this little Tirant peg is no big deal, but these pegs over here, they are just, they're terrible. They're really waxy, so they don't stick. The way that the geometry works so that they pull in, they don't level the peg or pull the peg down. They actually try to pop the peg up while you're making the adjustments on it, so it's pulling upwards on the peg so that you have to like really bear down on it to try to lock the peg in place. Just bad design. And same on the sides. You know, the head on this thing is so small that the angle, this peg box, the angles on these are all wrong. So the strings are bound up no matter where you put them. They're all bound up and crossed over because there's not enough length between like in this case, the ear and where the peg goes in and how it winds onto the peg. Anyhow, so those are all the issues there. After replacing all of that, swapping out, I replaced this little end piece too because it was junk. Put a new bearing on it on the back end, and then, like I said, redid the wheel, redid the center for the wheel, made new bridges, made new ears, made the nuts on the end. Made a new dog for it, which matches the new bridge. Put the new tirant on it because the other one was junk. And it still needs new tangents because the tangents in it are weak. I'm afraid they're going to break. And also it needs new keys because the keys on it are really rough, and they're made with a type of wood that's really granular, or not granular, linear, has a very heavy linear grain. And because it has very heavy linear grain and it's very open, it causes the keys to bind up so that they don't play smoothly, in which I've covered the whole things in Teflon powder, and hopefully they'll last for a little while. So, how does it sound, you say? Let's find out. So, it was tuned. I haven't tuned it since I started the video, but let's see. They provide a little turnagosh for this. It's a big, kind of chunky looking thing with a handle on it, but it's actually really functional as far as turning the pegs and whatnot. But it's over there, so I didn't bother with it. So there it is. That's just a single melody string. Tangents need a little adjustment still, but need a lot of adjustment, or the string does. Let's try this other drone. This is so that was a C drone. This is a G. It's not going to be perfect. I don't have the turnagosh. See, the pegs don't stick. Okay, I hate that. wants to be in C. Out of 10 already. From the very start was that they make these in white. So they basically just make them stripped down wood. And after they make them, then they do, so they build the whole thing. Maybe just don't leave the bridges on. Don't put the bridges on. Of course, the wheel and all that aren't part of it. Then they color spray them. So you've got this, nice rich dark color there, but you can see the open grain on the top and the kind of figuring on the side, which may or may not be real. It could just be faux. But the problem is that after they do that, then they spray them with a heavy coat of like a lacquer, like I don't know the equivalent of what it is for guitars, but essentially they coat them with a heavy coating of lacquer, so that the whole thing is coated, including the bridges, where you can see possibly where they were glued, where they were glued down, and then the finish was put over the top of that after it's glued in place. And in order to fix everything, you've got to rip those bridges off. And when you do that, it takes this finish up with it. And by the way, the finish is super polished, so it shows every tiny little scratch. And then you can see also around the edges where they've sprayed it. I don't know why this one won't focus up close. You can see around the edges where they've sprayed it, and they've sprayed the color on it, and it's overlapped onto all this finish work. And then you can see the work here that they've done where they've sprayed it, overlapped it, and it's just messy. So anyway, there it is, Chinese hurdy-gurdy. Only about, I don't know, my own time, probably just because I've been working, I worked at it slowly and had to do a lot of things, redo a lot of things, because what I thought would be right was totally incorrect. And so I had to rebuild things that I had built already twice, on earlier occasions. So total time in the repair on this thing is about 40 or 50 hours. And that's, making the bridges, doing the finish, cutting everything off, refinishing everything, lining everything up, new strings, trying to get the pegs to line up, trying to get the pegs right and to actually stick, making the new wheel, making the new centerpiece, or making the new center support for the wheel. The whole thing is a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work to redo something that shouldn't have been this bad. So this is a great example of why can't I have something cheap? Well, because cheap doesn't always mean good. And cheap sometimes means a lot of additional work in order to fix all the problems that were otherwise, that could have otherwise not been present in the instrument. So there you have it.